Well, good morning, Vietnam. I don't think you guys probably know that movie, but and I don't know why I was compelled to say that, but I saw Robin Williams on a YouTube video earlier. Maybe that's why. Good evening, though, everybody. What a day today. A little rainy, a little cruddy. But a lot of good stuff in the news, some interesting stuff in our day in history, and we've got kind of a scary situation where we left off, right? Jurgis got home before, it was around Thanksgiving, and Jurgis got home before the ladies. The ladies walked home on their own, and Jurgis is woken in the morning by one of the other members of the family because Ona never came home. Dun, dun, dun. And it's snowing out. So, when we left off in chapter 15, Jurgis, I think, had just thrown on his boots and a coat or something and run outside. And he's totally covered in snow. And he realizes, wait a minute, where the heck am I going? Well, this is a big city. How the heck am I going to find her? So with that, he set off in a run for the yards, stopping by the way to inquire in saloons that were open. Ona might have been overcome on the way, or else she might have met with an accident in the machines. When he got to the place where she worked, he inquired of one of the watchmen. There had not been any accident, so far as the man had heard. At the time office, which he found already open, the clerk told him that Ona's check had been turned in the night before, showing that she had left work. After that, there was nothing for him to do but wait, pacing back and forth in the snow, meantime to keep himself from freezing. Already the yards were full of activity. Cattle were being unloaded from the cars in the distance, and across the way beef luggers were toiling in the darkness, carrying 200-pound quarters of bullocks into the refrigerator cars. Before the first streaks of daylight, there came the crowding throngs of workmen, shivering and swinging their dinner pails as they hurried by. Jurgis took up his stand by the time office window, where alone there was a light enough for him to see. The snow fell so quick that it was only by peering closely that he could make sure that Ona did not pass him. 7 o'clock came, the hour when the great packing machine began to move. Jurgis ought to have been at his own place in the fertilizer mill, but instead he was waiting, in an agony of fear for Ona. It was 15 minutes after the hour when he saw a form emerge from the snow mist and sprang toward it with a cry. It was she. Running swiftly as she saw him, she staggered forward and half fell into his outstretched arms. "What's the matter? What's been the matter?" he cried. "Where have you been?" It was the several seconds before she could get her breath to answer him. "I couldn't get home. The snow, the cars had stopped." "But where did you go then?" he demanded. "I had to go to the home of a friend, with Jadwiga." Jurgis drew a deep breath, but then he noticed that she was sobbing and trembling, as if, in one of those nervous cries that she dreaded so. "But what's the matter?" he cried. What was happening?" "Oh, Jurgis, I was so frightened," she said, clinging to him. "I have been so worried." They were near the time station window. The people were staring at them. Jurgis led the way. "How do you mean?" he said in perplexity. "I was afraid. I was just so afraid," sobbed Ona. "I knew you wouldn't know where I was, and I didn't know what to do. I tried to get home, but I was so tired. Oh, Jurgis. He was so glad to get her back that he could not think clearly about anything else. It did not seem strange to him that she should be so very much upset. All her fright and incoherent presentations did not matter since he had her back. He let her cry away her tears, and then, because it was nearly 8 o'clock, and they would lose another hour if they delayed, he left her at the packing house door with her ghastly white face and her haunted eyes of terror. There was another brief interval. Christmas was almost come, and because the snow still held in the searching cold, morning after morning Jorgis half carried his wife to her post, staggering with her through the darkness until at last one night came the end. It lacked but 3 days of the holidays. About midnight, Marija and Elizabeta came home, exclaiming in alarm that they had found Ona had not come home. The two had agreed to meet her, and after waiting, had gone to the room where she worked, only to find that the ham wrapping girls had quit work the hour before and they had left. There was no snow that night, nor was it especially cold, and still Ona had not come. Something more serious must be wrong this time. They aroused Jurgis, and he sat up and listened crossly to the story. She must have gone home again with Jadwiga. He said Jadwiga only lived 2 blocks from the yards, and perhaps she had been tired. Nothing could have happened to her, and even if there had, there was nothing could be done until morning. Jurgis turned over in his bed, and he was snoring again before the two had closed the door. In the morning, however, he was up and early, an hour before the usual time. Jadwiga lived on the other side of the yards beyond Halstead Street with her mother and sisters in a single basement room. For Mikolas had recently lost one hand from blood poisoning, and their marriage had been put off forever. The door of the room was in the rear, reached by a narrow court, and Jurgis saw a light in the window and heard something frying as he passed. He knocked, half expecting that Ona would answer. Instead, there was one of Jadwiga's little sisters. One gazed at him through a crack in the door. "Where's Ona?" he demanded, and the child looked at him in perplexity. "Ona?" she said. "Yes," said Jurgis. "Isn't she here?" "No," said the child, and Jurgis gave a start. A moment later, Jadwiga peering over the child's head, when she saw who it was, and she slid around out of sight, for she was not quite dressed. "Jurgis must excuse her," she began. Her mother was very ill. "Ona isn't here?" Jurgis demanded, too alarmed to wait for her to finish. "Why, no," said Jadwiga. "What made you think she would be here?" "Had she said that she was coming?" "No," he answered, "but she hasn't come home, and I thought she would be here, as the same as before." "As before?" echoed Jadwiga in perplexity. "Uh-oh. The time she spent the night here," said Jurgis. "There must be some mistake," she answered quickly. "Ona has never spent the night here." Uh-oh. He was only half able to realize the words. "Why?" he exclaimed. "2 weeks ago, Jadwiga, she told me that it snowed that night and she could not get home. There must be some mistake," declared the girl. "She didn't come here." He steadied himself by the door still, and Jadwiga, in her perplexity, for she was fond of Ona, opened the door wide, holding her jacket across her throat. "Are you sure you didn't misunderstand her?" she cried. "She must have meant somewhere else. She said here," insisted Jurgis. "She told me about you and how you were and what you said. Are you sure you haven't forgotten? You weren't away?" "No, no," she exclaimed, and then gave a peevish voice. "Jadwiga, you are giving the baby a cold. Shut the door." Jurgis stood for half a minute more, stammering his perplexity through an eighth of an inch of a crack. And then, as there was really nothing more to be said, he excused himself and went away. He walked on half dazed without knowing where he went. Ona had deceived him. She had lied to him. And that could mean, where had she been? Where was she now? He could hardly grasp the thing, much less try to solve it. But 100 wild surmises came to him. A sense of impending calamity overwhelmed him, because there was nothing else to do. He went back to the time office to watch again. He waited till nearly half an hour past 7, and then went to the room where Ona worked to make for inquiries of Ona's forelady. The forelady he had found had not come yet. All the lines of cars that came down from downtown were stalled. There had been an accident in the powerhouse, and no cars had been running since last night. Meantime, however, the ham wrappers were working away, with someone else in charge of them. The girl who answered Jurgis was busy, and as she talked, she looked to see if she was being watched. Then a man came up, wheeling a truck. He knew Jurgis for Ona's husband and was curious about the mystery. Maybe the cars had something to do with it, he suggested. Maybe she's gone downtown. No, said Jurgis, she never went downtown. Perhaps not, said the man. Jurgis thought he saw him exchange a swift glance with the girl as he spoke, and he demanded quickly, what do you know about it? But the man had seen that the boss was watching him and started on again, pushing a truck. I don't know anything about it, he said over his shoulder. How should I know where your wife goes? Uh-oh. Then Jurgis went out again and paced up and down before the building. All morning he stayed there, with no thought of his work. About noon he went to the police station to make inquiries. Then he came back again for another anxious vigil. Finally, toward the middle of the afternoon, he set out for home once more. He was walking out Ashland Avenue. The streetcars had begun running again, and several passed him, packed to the steps with people. The sight of them set Jurgis to thinking again of the man's sarcastic remark, and half involuntarily he found himself watching the cars, with the result that he gave a sudden, startled exclamation and stopped short in his tracks. Then he broke into a run. For a whole block he tore after the car, only a little ways behind. That rusty black hat with the drooping red flower, it might not be Ona's, but there was little likelihood of it. He would know for a certain very soon, for she would get out 2 blocks ahead. He slowed down and let the car go on. She got out, and as soon as she was out of sight and on the side street, Jurgis broke into a run. Suspicion was rife in him now, and he was not ashamed to shadow her. He saw her turn the corner near their home, and then he ran again and saw her as she went up the porch steps of the house. After that, he turned back and for 5 minutes paced up and down, his hands clenched tightly and his lips set, his mind in turmoil. Then he went home and entered. As he opened the door, he saw Elizabeth, who had also been looking for Ona and had come home again. She was now on tiptoe and had a finger on her lips. Jurgis waited until she was close to him. Don't make any noise, she whispered hurriedly. What's the matter, he said. Ona is asleep, she panted. She is very ill. I'm afraid her mind's been wandering, Jurgis. She was lost on the street all night, and I've just only succeeded in getting her quiet. When did she come in, he asked. Soon after you left this morning, says Elizabeth. And has she been out since? No, of course not. She's so weak, Jurgis. Then he set his teeth hard together. You are lying to me, he said. Uh-oh. Elizabeth stared and turned purple. Why, she gasped. What do you mean? But Jurgis did not answer. He pushed her aside and strode in the bedroom door and opened it. Ona was sitting on the bed. She turned a startled look upon him as he entered. He closed the door in Elizabeth's face and went toward his wife. Where have you been, he demanded. She had her hands clasped tightly on her lap, and he saw that her face was white as paper and drawn with pain. She gasped once or twice as she tried to answer him, then began speaking low and swiftly. Jurgis, I think I have been out of my mind. I started to come last night. I could not find the way. I walked and walked all night, I think, and I only got home this morning. You needed a rest, he said in a hard tone. Why did you go out again? He was looking at her fairly in the face, and he could read the sudden fear. I had to go to this store, she gasped, almost in a whisper. I had to go. You are lying to me, said Jurgis. Then he clenched his hands and took a step toward her. Why do you lie to me? He cried. What are you doing that you have to lie to me? Jurgis, she exclaimed, staring up in fright. Oh, Jurgis, how can you? You have lied to me, I say. You told me that you had been at Jadviga's house the other night, and you hadn't. You had been where you were last night, somewhere downtown, for I saw you get off the car. Where were you? It was as if he had struck a knife into her. She seemed to go to pieces. For half a second she stood, reeling and swaying, staring at him with horror in her eyes. Then, with a cry of anguish, she tottered forward, stretching out her arms. But he stepped aside deliberately and let her fall. She caught herself on the side of the bed and then sank down, burying her face in her hands and bursting into frantic weeping. Then came out one of those hysterical cries that had so often been displayed. Ona sobbed and wept, her fear and anguish building themselves up into long climaxes. Furious gusts of emotion would come sweeping over her, shaking her as the tempest shakes the trees upon the hills. All her frame would quiver and throb with them. It was as if some dreadful thing rose up within her and took possession of her, torturing her, tearing her. This thing had been wont to set Jurgis quite beside himself, but now he stood with his lips set tightly and his hands clenched. She might weep till she killed herself, but she could not move him this time, not an inch, not an inch, because the sound she made set his blood running cold and his lips to quivering in spite of himself. He was glad of the diversion when Elizabeta, pale with fright, opened the door and rushed in. Yet he turned upon her with an oath. "Get out," he cried. "Go out." And then, as she stood hesitating, about to speak, he seized her by the arm and half flung her out of the room, slamming the door and barring it with a table. "Oh, excuse me," excuse me. Then turned again to Ona. "Now, answer me." Uh-oh. This is getting a little tense here. Let's see what happens. Yet she did not hear him. She was still in the grip of a fiend. Jurgis could see her outstretched hands, shaking and twitching, roaming here and there, over the bed at will. Like living things, he could see convulsions shuddering start in her body and run through her limbs. She was sobbing and choking as if there were too many sounds for one throat. They came chasing each other like waves upon the sea. Then her voice would begin to rise into screams, louder and louder until it broke in wild, horrible peals of laughter. Jurgis bore it until he could bear it no longer. Then he sprang at her, seizing her by her shoulders and shaking her, shouting to her ear, "Stop it, I say, stop it." She looked at him out of her agony. Then she fell forward at his feet. She caught them in her hands. In spite of his efforts to step aside, with her face upon the floor, lay writhing. It made a choking in Jurgis's throat to hear her, and she cried again. He cried again, more savagely than before. "Stop it, I say." This time she healed. She healed him, heated him, heated him, and caught her breath and lay silent, save for the gasping sobs that wrenched all her frame. For a long moment she lay there perfectly motionless, until a cold fear seized her husband. Thinking that she was dying, suddenly, however, he heard her voice say faintly, "Jurgis, Jurgis, what is it?" he said. He had to bend over. She was so weak, she was pleading with him. In broken phrases painfully uttered, "Have faith in me. Believe me." "Believe what?" he cried. "Believe that I know best and that I love you. And do not ask me what you did. Oh, Jurgis, please, please. It is for the best. It is." He started to speak again, but she rushed on frantically, heading him off. "If you will only do it. If you will only believe me. It wasn't my fault. I couldn't help it. It will be all right. It is nothing. It is no harm. Oh, Jurgis, please, please." She had hold of him and was trying to raise herself to look at him. She could feel the palsied shaking of her hands and the heaving of the bosom she pressed against him. She managed to catch one of his hands and gripped it convulsively, drawing it into her face and bathing it in her tears. "Oh, believe me," she wailed again. And he shouted in fury, "I will not." But still she clung to him, wailing aloud in her despair. "Oh, Jurgis, think what you are doing. It will ruin you. It will ruin us. It will ruin us. Oh no, you must not do it. Do not do it. You must not do it. It will drive me mad. It will kill me. No, Jurgis, I am crazy. It is nothing. You do not really need to know. We can be happy. We can love each other just the same. Oh, please, please believe me. Her words fairly drove him wild. He tore his hands loose and flung her off. Answer me, he cried. God damn it, I say, answer me. Uh-oh. I swallowed a piece of ice. She sank down upon the floor, beginning to cry again. It was like listening to the moan of a damned soul, and Jurgis could not stand it. He smote his fist upon the table by his side and shouted, Answer me. She began to scream aloud, her voice like the voice of a wild beast. I cannot do it. Why can you not do it? He shouted. I don't know how. He sprang and caught her by the arm, lifting her up and glaring into her face. Tell me where you were last night. Quick, out with it. Then she began to whisper, one word at a time. I was in a house downtown. What house? What do you mean? She tried to hide her eyes away, but he held her. Miss Henderson's house, she gasped. He did not understand at first. Miss Henderson's house, he echoed. Then suddenly an explosion with horrible truth burst over him. He reeled and staggered back with a scream. He caught himself against the wall, and he put his hand to his forehead, staring about him, whispering, Jesus, Jesus! An instant later, he leapt at her feet. She lay groveling at his feet. He seized her by the throat. Tell me, quick, who took you to this place? She tried to get away, making him furious. He thought it was fear of the pain of his clutch. He did not understand. It was the agony of her shame. Still, he answered him. Connor. Connor, he gasped. Who is Connor? The boss, she answered. The man. He tightened his grip in his frenzy, and only when he saw her eyes closing did he realize that he was choking her. He relaxed his fingers. He crouched, waiting until she opened her lids again. His breath beat hot into her face. Tell me, he whispered. Tell me about it. She lay perfectly motionless, and he had to hold his breath to catch his words. Her words. I did not want to do it. I tried not to do it. I only did it to save us. It was our only chance. Again, for a space, there was no sound but his panting. Ona's eyes closed when she broke again, and she did not open them. He told me he would have me turned off. He told me he would all of us would lose our places. He could never get anything to do it. Here again, he meant it. He would have ruined us. Jurgis's arms were shaking, so that he could scarcely hold himself up, and he lurched forward now, then as he listened. When did this begin? He gasped. At the very first, she said. She spoke as if in a trance. It was their plot, Mrs. Henderson's plot. She hated me. She wanted me. He wanted me. He used to speak to me out on the platform. Then he began to make love to me. He offered me money. He begged me. He said he loved me. Then he threatened me. He knew all about us. He knew we would starve. He knew your boss. He knew Mirage's. He would hound us to death, he said. Then he said if we would all of us be sure to work, always. Then one day he caught hold of me, and he would not let go. Where was this? In the hallway, at night, after everyone had gone. I could not help it. I thought of you, of the baby, of mother and the children. I was afraid to cry out. A moment ago, her face had been ashen gray. Now it was scarlet. She was beginning to breathe again. Jurgis made no sound. That was 2 months ago. Then he wanted me to come to that house. He wanted me to stay there. He said, all of us, that we would not have to work. He made me come there in the evenings. I told you. You thought I was at the factory. Then one night it snowed and I couldn't get back, and last night the cars were stopped. It was such a little thing to ruin us all. I tried to walk, but I couldn't. I didn't want you to know. It would have been all right. We could have gone on just the same. You need never know about it. He was getting tired of me. He would have let me alone soon. I am going to have a baby. I am getting ugly. He told me that twice. He told me last night. He kicked me last night too. And now you will kill him. You will kill him, and we shall die. All this she had said without a quiver. She lay still as death, not an eyelid moving, and Jurgis, too, said not a word. He lifted himself by the bed and stood up. He did not stop for another glance at her. He went to the door. He opened it. He did not see Elizabeth crouching terrified in the corner. He went out, hatless, leaving the street door behind him. The instant his feet were on the sidewalk, he broke into a run. He ran like one possessed, blindly, furiously, looking neither to the right nor the left. He was on Ashland Avenue before exhaustion compelled him to slow down, and then, noticing a car, he made a dart for it and drew himself aboard. His eyes were wild and his hair flying, and he was breathing hoarsely, like a wounded bull. But the people on the car did not notice this particularly. Perhaps it seemed natural to them that a man who smelled like Jurgis who smelled as Jurgis smelled, should exhibit an aspect to correspond. They began to give way before him as usual. The conductor took his nickel gingerly and with the tips of his fingers, then left him with the platform to himself. Jurgis did not even notice. His thoughts were far away. Within his soul, it was like a roaring furnace. He stood waiting, crouching for it as if to spring. He had some of his breath back when the car came to the entrance of the yards. He leapt off and he started again, racing at full speed. People turned and stared at him, and he saw no one. There was the factory, and he bounded through the doorway and down the corridor. He knew the room where Ona worked, and he knew Connor, the boss of the loading gang outside. He looked for the man as he sprang into the room. The truckmen were hard at work, loading the freshly packed boxes and barrels upon the cars. Jurgis shot one swift glance up and down the platform. The man was not on it. But then suddenly he heard a voice in the corridor and started for it with a bound. And in an instant more, he fronted the boss. I'm going to do another page, maybe another page and a half. He was a big red-faced Irishman, coarse-featured and smelling of liquor. He saw Jurgis as he crossed the threshold and turned white. He hesitated 1 second as if meaning to run. Then in the next, his assailant was upon him. He put his hands to protect his face, but Jurgis, lunging with all the power of his arm and body, struck him fairly between the eyes and knocked him backwards. The next moment he was on top of him, burying his fingers in his throat. To Jurgis, this man's whole presence reeked of crime that he had committed. The touch of his body was madness to him. It set every nerve of him a-tremble. It aroused all the demons in his soul. It had worked its will upon Ona, this great beast. Now he had it. It was his turn now. Things swam blood before him, and he screamed aloud in his fury, lifting his victim and smashing his head upon the floor. Uh-oh. Excuse me. Excuse me. The place, of course, was in an uproar. Women fainting and shrieking, the men rushing in. Jurgis was so bent upon the task that he knew nothing of this, and scarcely realized that people were trying to interfere with him. It was only when half a dozen men had seized him by the legs and shoulders were pulling at him that he understood that he was losing his prey. In a flash, he had bent down and sunk his teeth into the man's cheek. Yikes! And when they tore him away, he was dripping with blood, and little ribbons of skin were hanging in his mouth. Yikes! This got real. This became like the Housewives of Atlanta, right? Like it's a cat fight. Like they're going nuts. They got him down upon the floor, clinging to him by his arms and legs, and still they could hardly hold him. He fought like a tiger, writhing and twisting, half flinging them off, and starting toward his unconscious enemy. But yet others rushed in until there was a little mountain of twisted limbs and bodies, heaving and tossing, and working its way about the room. Oh my goodness, guys, I'm sorry, excuse me. In the end, by their sheer weight, they choked the breath out of him, and then they carried him to the company police station, where he lay still until they had summoned a patrol wagon to take him away. Well, I guess Jurgis went a little cuckoo kanuku here, and we found out where Ona was. Uh-oh. And Jurgis took it out on the boss that took advantage of Ona. So again, not a date night kind of book to read, right? But or if it was a movie, hey honey, let's go see The Jungle. No, but a good book. All right, my friends. So there was some odd news today. There's some interesting news today. Why not? Let's start with it. So President Trump, in a briefing last night, made a suggestion. And I had not seen that suggestion when we spoke last night. So he had said that to one of the doctors that was with him, he said something like, oh, well, they're trying some kind of ultraviolet, not therapy, ultraviolet like treatment. So, zap somebody with ultraviolet rays and see if that can get rid of the COVID. And he said, not only can we do that to them from the outside, but we can put something inside and, try to hit it with the ultraviolet rays. Okay. So then he said, well, we've also been talking about, or something of that nature, using disinfectant. He said disinfectant kills it in about a minute. And I can't remember exactly how he put it to the doctor that was next to him. But basically, people are looking at this as, the president was suggesting that people that injected disinfectant, like kitchen disinfectant, could possibly be a treatment. So I don't know if you guys heard about this today. Lysol officially put out a warning to the world. Do not inject yourself with Lysol disinfectant. It is not going to help you. I know I read early on that there were people that were literally drinking bleach. They were, and I don't like normally carry rubbing alcohol around, but right next to me, I've told you before, we're in our hobby room, our game room, my paint station's back there, and right over here is a 3D printer. And you have to clean the 3D printer with rubbing alcohol. That's why it's there. So people were drinking rubbing alcohol. Who the heck was it that told me in a Google Meet that somebody had come into Target and bought 24 bottles of rubbing alcohol. I guess they were, I don't know what the heck you're going to do with that much rubbing alcohol. It'd probably be easier to just make it yourself at that point. But anyway, excuse me. I'm sorry, guys. A lot of backtracking today. This was like a big thing in the news today about the president, making this, cleaning comment. But here's the thing, okay, my friends. This isn't something we can try. You know why? Because right on the bottle, and I'm sure that it says it right here too, It says for external use only. Minor cuts, scrapes, and burns. Keep out of the reach of children. If swallowed, get medical attention. So, you know what? It says the same thing on disinfectants too. So, again, and I'm not bashing the president. I think that this has got to be extremely excruciating, nerve wracking, doing these press conferences, but I don't know. I don't know what to. When I heard it, I really thought it was a joke. I thought people were, and then I said to myself, okay, I got to go watch this. So I went to, I think I went to YouTube, typed it in, bing, bing, boom. It came up. And I went, he's kind of suggesting that maybe they're going to try this. And so anyway, don't do it. If you think you're sick, go to the hospital. Let them treat you. Okay. So 16 states have apparently, I don't know how many of you guys heard, if you didn't hear about this, well, good. Now you have. But so 16 states have announced that they're going to reopen. And Governor Cuomo, or put in plans to the federal government saying that they're going to reopen. And Governor Cuomo today said, no, New York is not one of those states. What the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, has said is this, is that once your curve is flat and or in steady decline or in decline, you can begin the process of reopening or start talking about that process and planning it. So I think we're not even a week into the real kind of decline of this. So we would have another week to go, and then we would have I guess, another week to go after this, and then we can start the planning. And one of the things he did say, he said that when we do reopen, he's not going to open the state, right? He's going to say Schoharie County, Oneida County, that's not Oneida County, Delaware County, Oneida County, Adirondack counties, you guys open. In a week, maybe more. Okay. This county, that county, this county, go ahead and open up. I think Schenectady, Albany, New York City areas, Syracuse, Buffalo, I think that's probably going to be the last area to really let things open up. But he also said that, we've still got to see that infection rate has still got to go down quite a bit. Where was I? Oh, okay. So apparently, this was something that one of the reporters brought up in his press conference today. There are more and more states, and I think Arizona was one. I don't remember the other, but more and more states, like, the governor is doing this daily briefing. So more and more of these states are not briefing. They're not giving briefing details to the public. So they're not giving out the information like Governor Cuomo is. And some of these states are the states that are on that reopen list. One of the things that I also saw today was that the states where, like last night, we talked about these protests. States where these protests are happening, they're starting to see an increase in numbers, and they can say that they know definitively that the numbers are linked to people that are going to these rallies. So, it's kind of like you're intentionally going out there, you're not using a mask, you're throwing yourself out there, and then these are the people that are getting sick. Okay, yeah, Sydney, that's a good question. So, what the governor said is, anyways, I think you get my point on these states where these reopen rallies are happening. The governor has said this a number of times. Here's the deal. When we start to reopen, schools have got to be one of the first things, because schools are daycare, right? Not so much like for you. If mom and dad, went to work when I was 16, which they did, and let's say I was sick, I could stay home on my own, right? But generally speaking, I don't know, up to sixth graders, I guess, maybe, those are the types of kids that we can't really leave home. So we need schools to reopen. And I know at one point they had even mentioned, that what they were considering doing was opening elementary schools and leaving high schools to strictly distance learning. So let's open up the schools where the little kiddies have to go. But I think they were thinking about it. I don't know that they were honestly ever going to do it, because I think that would have created a host of problems. But I think what we're going to see, Sydney, is like they're going to say, Governor Cuomo is going to say all Schoharie County businesses are open, all Schoharie County schools are open. Bing! Middleburg, Cobleskill, Gilboa, Schoharie, Sharon Springs, bam, all those schools are open. Kids can go to those schools, right? Whee! The businesses reopened. Whee! In a week, we look, are there a lot of new cases in Schoharie County? No, there's 3. Okay. All right. Next wave of counties open back up, I think the other thing he said today in his news briefing was that in a week, he's going to talk to us about May 15th, right? So this whole New York pause is
live from NPR News. I'm Jack Spear.
What the heck?
In one of his shortest coronavirus briefings so far.
My Siri accidentally turned on here. Sorry about that, guys. What was I saying? I forgot what I was saying. I think it was about schools. Oh, no. May 1st. That's what it was. By around May 1st, or around this time next week, he's going to, thank you, Sydney, he's going to give us an update. And he was asked that question directly. New York pause. We're on pause until May 15th. And a reporter said, do you know when you're going to give an update? And he said in about a week. So I don't know. The real scary thing right now, my friends, is the nursing homes. So there's a couple things. The nursing home cases are really taking off. And this is what, when you look at horrible things in life happen, the way I think you get through them, the way that what helps you through them, the thing that has always helped me through those types of things is really trying to find some kind of positive in it. And what I was reading today, and I read this in a couple different places, is that clearly there is a deficiency in American nursing homes. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's intentional. It doesn't mean that these private nursing homes are trying to, take advantage of everybody. I'm sure that there are nursing homes that are doing that. But what it's showing us is that we need to revamp regulations on nursing homes. And, one of the things that nursing homes do not have is they are not required, apparently, to have a stock of all this PPE equipment, personal protection equipment, right? They don't have enough of it. And what's some people are suggesting is they need to have a closet somewhere that's jammed with this stuff, so that if a pandemic ever really happens, like it's happening now, that nursing homes, because those are the people that are most vulnerable, that they're protected. So I guess, again, how do you look at that positively? Is you say, well, we've gone through it, and now we know where the leaks are in the ship. Now we know how to fix those leaks, right? There was no way that we were ever going to go through this and everything was going to be perfect. There's no way. You go through things in life, you screw up, but you say you did your best, you planned, and that's what I guess the real question is that did we really do our best going through this? I feel like I have. I mean, I really, really have. I haven't. Tomorrow I've got to go shopping for my dad. Okay. I've got my gloves all set. I've got my mask all set. I've got a spare mask for my dad that I'm just going to give him, even though he's kind of quarantined in his house right now. He's not leaving it. I've got my list. I'm going to go in, I'm going to get out, bing, bang, boom. I'm not going to, stop to do this. I'm not going to Dunkin' Donuts. I'm not stopping at Stewart's. I'm bringing my coffee. I'm doing the best that I can, in this situation. I can't leave my dad, my 73-year-old father, blind, alone. I can't do that. I've got to go to him. So, but when I do it, I need to make sure that I am taking all the absolute precautions that I can. And I can't hang out for, a half a day with him. Dad, here you go. Here's your stuff, and I hope that a lot of people are doing that. I like to think that a lot of people are doing that, but I've seen people not doing it. The last time I was at the store for my dad, they're just people without anything on, and they're kind of showing it off, right? They're kind of saying, hey, look at me, draw attention to me. I don't care. This is dumb. This is stupid. I'm doing whatever I want. Okay. If that's what you want, then that's the way you want to live your life. That's the way you want to live your life. I hope you don't get sick. I hope you don't get sick. One of the real interesting things that my dad brought up, and Sydney, future nurse, I wonder what you think about this, is number one, everybody's saying, get ready for the second wave in the fall, because at some point next fall, we're going to get hit with another wave of it, right? And we're going to have a vaccine. It's going to happen. Probably every year you're going to get your flu shot. Here's your COVID shot. Okay, there's your vaccine, or vaccines, I guess, are not. Vaccines are a one-time deal. I don't know. Maybe they'll just have maybe they have a COVID shot, like a flu shot. Anyway, what about all the anti-vaxxers? What about the people that do not allow their children, they do not allow themselves to receive vaccines? This has been a continuing discussion, and it's been a big discussion in the last year, because New York State, downstate, had a huge breakout of measles. And I don't know if you guys remember that. I want to say it was like, wasn't it in October? I think in October there was a big breakout of measles. And a lot of, hey, you know what? New York has a religious exemption to you being vaccinated. If it is against your religion to vaccinate yourself and your children, New York State, respects the fact that you're going to practice your religion, and they're not going to tell you not to do it. Is this different? Has this upped the ante a little bit? And again, I think that it's the lethality of it. And one person, when I was in graduate school, there was this big, before I was in graduate school, there was the whole "no child is left behind," right? We're going to help every kid through. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And somebody came up with this, this saying that "no child left behind" was comparing apples to oranges. And you can't do that. And people are starting to, scientists are coming forward and saying people have to stop comparing the flu to COVID. No, you can't do it. It's like comparing, cancer to a broken leg. Okay. It is not the same thing. The amount of people that died of the flu in the same amount of time does not come close to or equal the amount of people that have caught this. They're talking about 2.7 million New Yorkers may very well have gotten it. A lot of people don't know that they got it, and they built up the antibodies. But this thing, the way it spreads, is not like the flu, and people have to stop. They've got to stop comparing it. Okay. Oh, so I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in New York City today, and she said, this is kind of, I don't know, maybe is it ironic? Is that what we want to call it? So one of the places she and some of the people that she knows, where they're going to exercise, they want to go to a place where they can run, where there are not a lot of people around typically, where it's safe, and they're not going to be bothered. Go ahead. Let's see if one of my friends out there, let's see if one of you guys can guess. I'll come back to that. They want to run somewhere where it's safe, where there's not a lot of people around, where there are roads and paths or whatever where they can, run. And somewhat near their house. So what am I talking about? Where is my friend going to run on a daily basis? In a cemetery. You've got it. That's it. And I guess she told me it's not busy packed, but that's where her and some people she know, they were like, where the heck can we get out of the house and just, yep, let's go running in the cemetery. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. There's a lawyer down, and I don't know if you guys heard about this. There's a lawyer down in Florida. He is not happy. He is not happy at all with Floridians. He's not happy that the beaches are reopening. So I don't know if you guys heard about this. He has got himself a big Grim Reaper outfit. And he is pledging to travel to the beaches and walk up and down the beaches in the Grim Reaper outfit to, make a point, I guess, to all these people that are out there. So one of the things, we're looking at a $13.3 billion revenue loss, right? Yeah, there you go for some quiet time. There you go. we're looking at a $13 billion loss in revenue for the state. So that's about 14% of the state income. And the governor is saying to the federal government, the next stimulus package needs to have money for states. Otherwise, all this rebuilding or all this stimulus stuff isn't going to do anything. It's not going to do anything at all because things are just going to continue to crumble afterwards. It's just, it's like we've got this big gaping wound and you're throwing a couple Band-Aids on it. If we give people stimulus money, but then in a couple months we have to cut all these state jobs. Hello, we're going to need more stimulus. We're going to need more stimulus. We're going to need more stimulus. So he said that when it comes to federal tax money collected and contributed to the federal government, New York is number one in giving federal aid. And it's time for us to get a little of it back because we need it. We're ground zero for, this pandemic in our country. What else? Oh, President Trump did sign the new stimulus bill, $310 million in the PPP, payroll protection program. This is now law. $310 million for that, $75 million for hospitals, $25 million for more testing. And there is going to be a good amount of that money that's going to come to New York. Now, one of the things that, Colorado. So as far as I know, this is the first time that this has happened. But the Colorado Health Department has closed a Walmart Supercenter grocery store because they now know that a Walmart employee infected his family and I believe has infected customers while doing business in the store. So the health department shut that one Walmart down in Aurora, Colorado, interestingly enough. And I know that Walmart's, I think, in New York State and around the region, I think in Vermont too, maybe in New Jersey, they're only letting a certain amount of people in the store at any one time. The only other thing I really saw in the news kind of cool today is that apparently there's a Latham car dealership that if you're having car problems, they will link in with you and your phone and FaceTime and whatever you have, and they will help you fix your car. So, if you got the tools and you have a little bit of know-how, you can zoom in and whatever, and they're doing virtual servicing on your car. I don't know what dealership it was though, or what exactly, but it was in Latham car dealership, virtual service. That's kind of cool, I guess, right? But I would think it's got to be pretty limited, right? They can't be doing a lot of stuff. I mean, you got to have a lot of tools. And you got to have that thing to lift the car. Okay, so let's do our day in history. Oh, okay. Yep. I did hear that. Yes, Sydney, I did hear that. Is that across the country, though, Sydney, or is that just in New York? Do you know? I don't know. This day in history. In the year 1800, John Adams approves the creation of the Library of Congress. $5,000 was set aside out of the federal budget to help create the Library of Congress. I've never been there. Not sure, Sydney. That's okay. That's all right, kiddo. I was supposed to go there this summer with the scouts. We had a trip planned. I don't think it's going to happen, though. On this day, here's a cool one. I think this is a cool one. On this day in 1938, the first seeing eye dog went into service. That is pretty cool. On this day in 1938. On this date in 1945, the now President Truman, not Vice President Truman, President Truman, is briefed on the Manhattan Project, which is the program that the secret program that developed the atomic bomb. On this day in 1948, the Berlin airlift begins. What happens at the end of World War II is that the Soviets take over part of Germany, and the Allies, well, we're all allies at the end of the war, but the British, the Americans, the French, and the Soviets all are occupying different parts of Germany. And I grew up with until was it 90, 91, 92? 91, 92, somewhere around there. There used to be East Germany and West Germany. East Germany was a communist country. West Germany was a democracy, right? And now, of course, it's just Germany. But what happened was the Soviets had locked in Berlin, and they wanted to trap basically scientists and different intellectuals into in Berlin, the German capital, and they wanted to use them to further advance, the Soviet Union. And what we did was we began this process of flying in water, medicine, food, all of these things on a continual basis. So planes were continually leaving America, leaving England, and bringing everything they needed to keep them going. And basically the Soviets were going to starve them in until they kind of submitted. And eventually the Soviets lifted the blockade, so to say, and, this peace initiative worked. It was one of the first kind of tense moments of the Cold War. So in 1979, students in Iran overthrow and take the Stella is about to pounce on me here. If you see an animal attack, that's what I'm trying to keep an eye on her here. The Iranian students overthrow the U.S. embassy in Tehran. And we go through this, very contentious time, very stressful time with Middle East relations. And the president at the time, President Carter, is very much he's a Democrat. He's a, people call, this guy's a beatnik. He's a peacenik. He doesn't know anything about the military. Well, oddly enough, Jimmy Carter actually went to Annapolis. He went to the Naval Academy. He very much had knowledge of our military, and that's one of the reasons why during this crisis he didn't want to use the military to go after Iran. But I believe it was 64, 65 hostages that the Iranians had taken, and our top generals were saying, let's go. Americans were saying, let's go, let's light these people up. We need to take these people out, and we need to get our hostages back. And finally, after several months, Carter finally says, okay, let's do it. Let's send in a little secret ops mission and Delta Force mission to go in. And on this day in 1980, what happens is the helicopters that were going to go in and bring the special forces guys to free the hostages went down in a big sandstorm. So that rescue failed. In 1990, the Space Shuttle Discovery launched the Hubble telescope on this day in 1990. And I remember, this was one of those things where we're like, all right, NASA's doing good again after the Challenger explosion. It was like, whoa, this is a national tragedy. Should we keep doing this? Should we keep putting money into this? And then, NASA had already at that time, started developing and building the Hubble telescope. So in 1990, the Hubble telescope goes up there and it says, well, we're going to be able to take pictures of this. We're going to be able to take pictures of that, which is going to help us, figure out the origins of the universe and all this kind of stuff. And then, so I guess that's 30 years ago. But then there was this like thing where the scientists that had like put all the software into the Hubble telescope had put everything in yards, right? They totally screwed up. Like all their calculations, they had used yards for everything when they were supposed to be using meters, right? So for a while, I remember the Hubble telescope, everybody's like, yeah, we're going to get all this awesome stuff. And then it was just like, Houston, we have a problem. It was something like that. It was something really, and I think that's what it was. They programmed it, all the software, to be calculated in yards, but it should have been. So they had to, I don't know, they probably had to spend like $9 quadrillion to fix it. The last thing that I have in the news on this day in 1991, well, there's this new invention out there, my friends, and this new invention is causing a ruckus. And it's on this day in 1991 that on golf courses, something is banned because this new invention is creating a problem for golfers. It is creating a major distraction. What is that invention? What is that new thing that golf clubs, starting on this day, golf courses, begin to ban? That's right, people. Cell phones. So portable cell phones, flip phones, the first phones that were out there. I guess not the first ones were flip phones. But because they were becoming such a major distraction, it was on this day in 1991 that the first golf courses start to ban the use of them while golfers are out on the course. Very interesting. Well, you know what, my friends? We made it another day. I don't know if I told you this story the other day. I heard about a Marine, I think it was a Marine colonel, who told his men, he said, and I know one of the things I've told you guys that I've been listening to a lot of podcasts lately. There are so many cool podcasts out there for so many different topics, and I've really found some cool ones to listen to. But anyway, so I was listening to this podcast, and this guy said his Marine colonel said to him, every day make your bed. Doesn't matter how late you wake up. It doesn't matter how tired you are when you wake up. Doesn't matter what mood you are when you wake up. Make your bed. And, the Marines just always did it. I mean, they had to do it anyways, but I guess this is something the colonel had always told them. And then this guy's talking about, he said he finally kind of got the guts to say to his colonel, one day he said, why is it so gosh darn important to you that we make our bed every day? And he said, well, when you go to bed and every morning you've gotten up and you've made your bed, every night when you go to bed, at least you've accomplished something. At least that day, you knew that you accomplished one thing in making your bed. So, I thought, well, there you go. I usually do make my bed, and my older son makes his bed. My younger son, his bed, it's, his blankets and stuff are kind of twisted around and everything. And I think that's just his way of making his bed. it is what it is. But I thought that was kind of cool. Hey, if one little thing you're doing is just making your bed, well, then at least you've accomplished something. So tomorrow morning, get up, take your pajamas off. I told you guys that last week, I think. Get out of your PJs, well, that's right. Even Sydney said, like, some days she just gets in her scrubs. She's getting in that frame of mind. Do it, But we made it another day. We're going to make it another day. We're going to make it more. We're going to make it more. We're going to make it more. And, we're going to do it together. So we're doing great in the book. We've got to be, I think, by Sunday night, we'll be, maybe we hit halfway through tonight, but pretty soon we'll be halfway through. And I don't know. I think we're probably going to get this book done and maybe get another book done. And I was actually wondering, maybe I'll put a poll up on Google Classroom. There's a really cool book that I read a couple years ago. It was probably more, maybe 4 summers ago. And it's called I Am Number 4. One of the things that I didn't really enjoy or really develop a love of learning or reading, I think, until college or after college. And I always read and, did what I was supposed to do in school, but I didn't really actively go out there and do a lot of independent reading. Not maybe it was my senior year, but anyways, the amount of youth, young adult, right, YA fiction out there is incredible. And somebody, I can't remember who the heck it was. Oh, I know who it was. It was Mrs. Shaw, the old librarian assistant. She had told me, she said, "Oh, did you ever read I Am Number 4?" And I don't think so. What is this book? What are these books? So I got it. I think I got like the paperback for like $5.99, and I didn't put that book down for 3 days. And how the book starts is kind of cool. And I've read, I think a new book came out, but I've read 6 of the 7 books, and I don't know if you guys have read it, but so what happens is the book starts out and there's like dudes are chasing somebody through like a jungle or something, like a jungle or forest or something. And all of a sudden they get the guy, right? They get him and they kill him. And this guy who's like in the middle of Ohio or he's out in the Midwest, right? It's like he feels this burning on his leg. And what the whole I Am Number 4 is that this race of beings, their planet was being destroyed. And they put the power, they harness like the power of their planet into these 9 beings. And they're all kids. And they send them all to Earth because there is a connection between Earth and this Lorien. That's the name of the other planet. But what happens is when they send these kids to Earth, they kind of put a spell on them. And the spell is this. Kids can be killed, but they have to be killed in order. So the bad guys have to find number 1 and kill number 1 first. If the bad guys found number 8 and they like tried to kill number 8, they themselves would die. So when this book series start, they found 3. And it's really a neat kind of teenage coming to age story. And the books are really, really cool. The last book I had for like a year and a half, I kept looking for the sequel, and nothing. And I kind of forgot about it. And then maybe in January, I stumbled. Oh my God, the sequel finally came out. But that's a really cool book. So I was actually thinking maybe when this one's done, maybe we'll read that. Maybe we'll read some fiction. We're just going to get crazy. We're going to read some fiction. All right. And that's certainly, there's a lot of there. It's a serious book, but there's a lot of humor, and it might be something that really, you guys can relate to it. So, but anyways, my friends, I'm going to sign off for tonight. I got to get up early. I got to go shopping for my dad. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being awesome people. Keep fighting the fight. Run the marathon. Don't run the sprint. Run the marathon. We're going to make it. Okay. We're going to make it through it. Be good. Tomorrow's Saturday. Tomorrow night is Saturday. You're not going to see me. That's my night with the boys. And I'll see you back Sunday for more of the jungle. Be good and be well. See you Sunday, guys.